His video highlights moments where Joe Rogan challenged woke guests on his show.
I mean, if you're choosing to add hormones to a child's body, that's a choice. An actual woman. Yeah, I said actual. Cough.
Gender's not just genitals, it's in your mind.
Right.
Starting with Adam Canover, who faced criticism for his stance on trans children. The conversation began when Joe asked Adam about his view on trans athletes. Adam responded that he saw no issue with trans individuals competing, but Joe disagreed, arguing that it's unfair for a
sports with trans athletes, that is a sporting world that I'm more interested in.
Biological woman to face a biological man in competition. Joe presented a strong argument, but Adam countered, claiming that
so if you're a woman and you don't take any extra hormones or male hormones, you're not taking steroids or any sort of performance-enhancing drugs, but then someone comes along that was a man for 30 years and decides that they're going to be a woman, and this has happened, and literally transitioned a few months ago, and competes as a woman and destroys records and dominates you in that sport. It's not fair. It's as much cheating as taking steroids when the other person doesn't.
Level playing field doesn't exist. Adam supported the idea of dismantling gender boundaries, but Joe posed
I disagree, and
What do you disagree about?
I don't think that there is such a thing as a perfectly level playing field. I think we decide what kind of playing field we want to have.
Sure, but we do make the distinction where we don't allow men to compete in women's divisions.
And I think that distinction may be breaking down a bit.
Tough question. Should men be allowed to compete in women's weightlifting? Joe highlighted that men can compete in women's sports through transitioning, but Adam shifted focus.
So you think that males should be able to compete in the women's division of weightlifting?
No, I don't necessarily.
But they can if they transition.
Focus, suggesting that the biological differences would eventually change since people can start transitioning as young as 7. Joe disagreed, arguing that 7-year-olds don't understand who they are. Adam then brought up his friend, who has a trans child.
You're seeing folks transition much earlier age, you know.
Well,
and so if someone is transitioning from the age of 7 years old, right, working with those hormones, from that age, right, they're not going to have, their body situation is going to be very different than the one that you postulated, right?
Implying that hormones are necessary for those who identify as a different gender. Joe rejected this view.
No reason to give kids hormones, and there's no reason to decide before a person's frontal lobe is completely fully developed, which doesn't even take place till 25. You're going to let them decide what sex they're going to be for the rest of their life?
Asserting that transitioning children is problematic. When Adam was asked a straightforward question, he hesitated and Joe shut him down, pointing out that his argument lacked substance.
I have a friend who has a trans kid. He's explained that my child from a very young age consistently said, I am a girl, and has never contradicted themselves, never changed their mind. And so the humane thing and the thing that he felt was good to do as a parent was to embrace that choice on his child's part, right?
Embrace that choice meaning hormonally.
I shouldn't even phrase it as a choice, embrace that identity.
Okay, but if that's who they are, if they think that they're a girl, why do you have to give them hormones to make them more of a girl?
Feedback on this video was overwhelmingly negative, with viewers commenting that if they had a penny for every time Adam said he was...
Because... I'm sorry, can you expand on the question?
It's a simple question. If you say that the child thinks it's a girl, so you're going to give the child hormones.
Mm-hmm.
If the child thinks it's a girl, let it be a girl. You don't have... Why are you adding hormones? If you're shooting hormones into a child... and you're affecting the child's development, you're saying that's not a choice. That's nonsense. Of course it's a choice. You're choosing to chemically change this child's body, and you're saying that this isn't a choice. Well, it's definitely a choice to do that.
As an expert, they could hire a real one to explain how wrong he was. It was clear that Adam didn't know what he was talking about, but listened to Joe's argument without interrupting. This contrasted with the next guest, Pete Dominick, who confidently suggested that the U.S. Constitution should be rewritten. Pete Dominick has good intentions and wants reforms to reduce gun violence in America. But the key question remains, how can we collect all the guns?
Our Constitution is also silly. Let's remake everything. Have a serious conversation about what kind of guns and bullets people can have. There's so much better that we can do.
When studies consistently show there are too many in the U.S. Joe Rogan argues it's impossible, highlighting that there are more guns than people in the country, making it unfeasible to take them all away. Pete suggests government buyback programs as a solution, proposing that people be offered money to turn in their guns.
There's so many guns. You're not getting them all. It's not possible.
That's the most important point. There's already 330. There's more guns than there are people, so what do? I think you buy as many as you can back for sure. You spend a whole bunch of taxpayer money.
If you wanted to do that without changing the Second Amendment, like you just have a buyback where you just offer people the opportunity to make some money by giving their guns up.
However, Joe counters that it's unrealistic to expect all guns to be collected, emphasizing that there are already 330 million guns in circulation.
The Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong by the Supreme Court, in my opinion. I mean,
Talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
No, because people can have guns. You can have guns. Everybody has a right to have guns. You just can't have these guns.
Pete responds with frustration, repeating his stance but shifting the focus of the conversation. Pete interrupts Joe's point with a smug attitude, claiming that the Second Amendment has been wrongly interpreted. This seems to frustrate Joe, who stays calm.
The main issue is definitely the guns and the bullets in them.
Well, the main issue is the person that's capable of shooting people with the guns and the bullets.
No, it's the guns and the bullets.
The guns and the bullet are inanimate objects. Without a person pulling the trigger, we're talking nonsense here.
While Pete contradicts himself. Pete begins by saying the issue is with
the conversation about like the freedom, like the Second Amendment to me is, it's just your interpretation. Fine, whatever your interpretation is fine.
That's what's interesting
but
about it.
But there's a human impact. It's a healthcare issue, it's so extreme. It's really, if you want to know the answer to healthcare issues, you should talk to public health experts.
Guns and bullets, but then shifts his position, calling it a healthcare problem just moments later. Joe questions what Pete means, but Pete fails.
But hold on, what research? On what?
Well, they don't have enough research on gun violence,
what
unfortunately.
Are you talking about then?
I'm talking about if you want to know the solutions for what is impacting and creating death by any measure, accidental death.
Right, but we're talking about gun violence, right?
Right.
What healthcare professionals have the solutions to gun violence?
Fails to provide a clear answer, continuing to ramble in circles. His inability to stay consistent or logical leaves him struggling in the debate. Meanwhile, Joe maintains a steady, rational perspective throughout, easily outmaneuvering Pete in the conversation. In contrast, the next guest, Flint Dibble, had a very different experience when he appeared on episode 20.
People ask, here's just a Google search. Archaeologist Flint Dibble says Hancock's claims reinforce white supremacist ideas, stripping indigenous people of their rich heritage, and instead giving credit to aliens or white people. Actually, I've never...
Did you really?
136 of the Joe Rogan Experience with Graham Hancock. The heated exchange...
No, I said that this idea of Atlantis, the way it goes back 200 years, it has been used for those reasons.
So are you saying your quote is incorrect?
I think that it's editing me out of context, Graham. I've never called you a white supremacist or a racist.
Began when articles accused Graham of being a racist and a white supremacist. When Joe Rogan asked Flint if he made these claims, Flint repeatedly denied it, but the tension remained high throughout the debate. Flint Dibble maintains that he only...
This quote here, reinforce white supremacist ideas, stripping indigenous people with a rich heritage, and instead giving credit to aliens or white people. None of those things are true.
I know, Graham doesn't even talk about aliens.
Right, but
and
what,
so
did
that's
you
why
say that?
I said that not in specific relation to Hancock's claims, but in specific relation to this narrative of Atlantis that has gone back hundreds of years.
Called the sources Graham Hancock uses racist, not Graham himself. Joe Rogan disagrees, arguing that by associating Graham with...
Here's The Guardian, so they're misquoting you, are they? As Dibble states, such claims reinforce white supremacist ideas. They strip indigenous people of their rich heritage and instead give credit to aliens or white people. Why didn't you get The Guardian to put that right?
With these accusations, Flint is trying to cancel him. Flint strongly denies this, but was unaware.
Well, I don't...
Did you actually say that, though?
I did not say that Graham reinforces white supremacist ideas. As I've said...
So this quote is not real?
They stripped the stories of Atlantis? Yes, right?
So the quote reinforce white supremacist ideas, that's not yours.
No, that's not a quote. It's not a quotation.
Right, it was in the other article. Quote,
This is your own article, Flint. Here you are. I'm quoting from, that's a quote from your article published in The Conversation. This sort of race science is outdated and long since debunked, especially given the strong links between Atlantis and Aryans proposed by several Nazi archaeologists. You are associating me with this, and you are attempting to get me
I'm asking
cancelled
you to
effectively.
distance yourself from that. Is
But
actually what I'm trying to do.
That's not what you're doing, though.
Aware that Graham had come prepared with more evidence. When pushed further, Flint fails to give a clear response and evades the questions, avoiding accountability throughout the entire 4-hour podcast. So, he never acknowledges any...
More breaking news this evening. Joe Rogan, an extremely popular podcaster, announced on social media today that he has COVID. In his statement on social media, Rogan said he has taken several therapeutics to recover.
Turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
Wrongdoings. This situation mirrors CNN's false accusation that Joe Rogan was using horse dewormer and endangered...
Bro, do I have to sue CNN? CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Yeah, what? So
They must know that that's a lie.
there's a lot of people saying it.
I literally got it from a doctor.
public health with his use of ivermectin. However, Joe had the...
This is the grand conspiracy, right? The grand
Right.
conspiracy is the pharmaceutical companies are all in cahoots to try to make anybody who takes this stuff look crazy. But what's crazy is look how better I got.
Yeah.
I got better pretty quick, bitch.
Let's go to
medication prescribed by a doctor and made a full recovery in just 4 days. After revealing the source of the medication, Joe sealed CNN's fate. CNN even edited footage of Joe to make him appear severely ill while spreading multiple false claims. In the end, Joe came out on top, though CNN never admitted any mistakes. Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.